The business card trembled in his hands as James stared at the modest apartment door, wondering if he had the courage to knock. Behind that door was a birthday party he hadn't been invited to, not by anyone who mattered. Just a 7-year-old child who'd looked into his eyes an hour ago and seen something he'd been hiding from himself for years. The truth was, he'd been dying slowly in his corner office, suffocating under the weight of his own success. And he hadn't even noticed until a little girl with uneven bunches asked him a question no one else had bothered to ask in longer than he could remember. But we should start at the beginning, shouldn't we? Where all good stories about second chances tend to begin. The patisserie occupied a converted Victorian terrace on Maple Street, the sort of establishment that had weathered 2 world wars and countless economic storms without losing an ounce of its charm. Brass bells chimed above the entrance, and the aroma of vanilla and fresh bread created an invisible embrace that pulled you inside whether you'd planned to enter or not. The late afternoon sun streamed through leaded glass windows, casting patterns across marble countertops that had been polished by 3 generations of careful hands. Behind the counter stood Mrs. Davies, a woman in her 60s with silver hair pinned in a neat bun and eyes that missed absolutely nothing. She was arranging profiteroles when the child entered. The girl couldn't have been older than 7, with auburn hair gathered into 2 bunches that sat at slightly different heights, suggesting she'd insisted on doing them herself that morning despite maternal protests. Her dress was navy blue with tiny white dots, clearly handed down from someone larger, and she carried a small cloth purse pressed against her chest as though it contained the crown jewels. Her green eyes swept across the display cases with a mixture of wonder and careful calculation, and she moved with the precise deliberation of someone navigating a museum full of priceless artifacts. Mrs. Davies had been running this patisserie for 35 years, and she prided herself on reading people the moment they crossed her threshold. This child moved like someone who understood that luxuries were earned, not expected, that sweetness was something you saved for and treasured. "Good afternoon, darling," Mrs. Davies said warmly, coming around the counter with flour still dusting her apron. "What brings you in on this lovely day?" The little girl lifted her chin, and when she spoke, her voice carried a determination that seemed too large for such a small frame. "I need to purchase a birthday cake, please. It's for my mum. She's turning 32 tomorrow, and I'd like to surprise her." "How wonderfully thoughtful of you," Mrs. Davies replied. "What sort of cake does your mum fancy?" "Strawberry," the girl answered without hesitation. "She adores strawberries, and perhaps something with decorations, flowers maybe, because she works so terribly hard and deserves something truly beautiful." She paused, then added more quietly, "Though I've only got £5. She reached into her cloth purse and extracted a crisp £5 note, holding it up with both hands as one might present a sacred offering, which Mrs. Davies suspected it rather was. Mrs. Davies felt her heart constrict. The most modest cake in her shop cost £30, and that was for something barely large enough for 4 people. A proper celebration cake with decorations and fresh strawberries would run closer to £55. But gazing at this child's hopeful expression, turning her away felt impossible. "Let's have a look at what we can arrange," Mrs. Davies said gently. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Poppy," the girl replied. "And my mum's name is Emma." "Well then, Poppy, why don't you examine our selection and show me which cake you think Emma would love most?" Poppy pressed her nose to the glass, studying each creation with the intensity of an art critic at the National Gallery. Eventually, her finger landed on an exquisite 3-layer strawberry cake with cream cheese frosting, fresh strawberries cascading down its sides, and delicate sugar flowers adorning the top. "That one," she whispered reverently. "That's absolutely perfect." Mrs. Davies looked at the cake Poppy had selected. It happened to be a custom order for a customer collecting it in 90 minutes. Cost £85. She was attempting to formulate a gentle alternative when the brass bells announced another visitor. The man who entered appeared to be in his early 40s, with dark blonde hair showing hints of gray at the temples and the kind of face that would have been quite striking if exhaustion hadn't carved itself into every line. He wore an expensive charcoal suit with a loosened tie, and everything about his posture suggested someone carrying an invisible weight too heavy for any one person to bear alone. He positioned himself politely behind Poppy, waiting his turn, and Mrs. Davies noticed despite his obvious distraction. He maintained impeccable manners. "Forgive me one moment, dear," Mrs. Davies said to Poppy. "Let me assist this gentleman, and then we'll sort out your cake, all right?" But Poppy had already turned around, and when she looked up at the man with those serious green eyes, she said something that made time itself seem to pause. "Pardon me, sir," Poppy said in her small but steady voice. "Are you lonely?" The man blinked, visibly startled. "I'm sorry, what? You seem lonely," Poppy stated matter-of-factly. "My mum gets that look sometimes when she's overwhelmed by the bills or when she thinks about my da. Is someone you love far away?" Mrs. Davies began to apologize. "I'm terribly sorry, sir. Children can be rather—" But the man raised his hand, and something in his expression had softened in a way that made him look years younger. He knelt down to Poppy's eye level. "You know something?" he said quietly. "You're quite right. I am feeling rather lonely." "How on earth did you know?" "Your eyes," Poppy said simply. "They look empty." The man released a breath that might have been laughter or might have been something else entirely. "You're remarkably observant." "I'm James." "I'm Poppy." She studied him with concern. "What are you doing in a patisserie if you're lonely? Don't you have people to celebrate with?" "It's actually my birthday today," James admitted. "I turned 42 about 3 hours ago. I was planning to collect something sweet and spend the evening in my flat, probably working through some contracts. I don't really have anyone to celebrate with anymore." "That's dreadfully sad," Poppy announced. "Everyone deserves company on their birthday. What happened to your people?" James smiled sadly. "I have a rather demanding career. I run a company, which means terribly long hours and constant travel. Somewhere along the way, I stopped returning phone calls and declined too many invitations. My parents passed on some years back. I never had siblings, and the friends I once had eventually stopped trying to reach me. I woke up one morning and realized I'd built an empire but forgotten to build a life. Rather pathetic, really." Mrs. Davies found herself blinking back tears as she pretended to arrange pastries. "What about you?" James asked. "What brings you here, Poppy?" "I'm purchasing a birthday cake for my mum," Poppy explained, holding up her £5 note again. "She's turning 32 tomorrow. I've been saving my pocket money for 4 months because she works 2 jobs and never buys anything nice for herself. I want her to have that strawberry cake with the flowers because strawberry is her favorite, and she deserves something that makes her feel special." James looked at the £5, then at the cake Poppy had indicated, and Mrs. Davies watched understanding bloom across his features. He stood and met her eyes over Poppy's head, and something passed between them, an unspoken acknowledgement of the situation and its significance. "That's a magnificent cake," James said carefully. "Your mother is fortunate to have such a thoughtful daughter." "The thing is," Poppy confessed, her voice dropping to barely a whisper, "I don't believe £5 will be sufficient. But it's everything I have. Mrs. Davies is trying to help me work something out." James was silent for a long moment. Then he reached for his wallet. "You know, Poppy, I have an idea. Since today is my birthday too, and I don't have anyone to share it with, what if we became partners?" Poppy's eyes widened. "What sort of partners?" "Birthday cake partners," James explained. "You take that beautiful strawberry cake for your mum's celebration tomorrow, and I'll consider it my birthday cake as well. That way, I won't be spending my birthday entirely alone, because I'll know somewhere in London, someone is celebrating with a cake that I helped choose." "But it's your birthday," Poppy protested. "You should have your own cake." "I think," James said gently, "that helping you give your mother something beautiful would be the best birthday present I could give myself. It would make today feel less empty. Would you allow me to do that?" Poppy's brow furrowed in thought. "But I should contribute. I have £5. "Here's what we'll do," James proposed. "You give me your £5 and I'll add the remainder. We'll be equal partners. Deal?" He extended his hand, and after a moment's consideration, Poppy shook it solemnly, her small hand disappearing in his. She handed over her £5 note with ceremonial gravity. "I'd like to purchase that strawberry cake with the flowers," James told Mrs. Davies, passing her both the note and his credit card. "And please add whatever £5 would buy. Perhaps some of those chocolate eclairs I noticed?" Mrs. Davies, who'd been watching this exchange with tears threatening to spill, nodded. I'll box up some fresh scones as well. Poppy's contribution to the order. While Mrs. Davies prepared the boxes, James settled into one of the cafe's small wrought iron chairs, and Poppy climbed onto the seat across from him, her legs swinging above the floor. "Why haven't you got anyone to celebrate with?" Poppy asked with the unfiltered directness only children possess. "Don't you have a wife or children?" "No," James admitted. "I was engaged once, actually, about 7 years ago. But I kept canceling plans for board meetings and missing important occasions for business trips. Eventually, she realized she was marrying someone who'd never truly be present, and she left. Can't say I blame her. I chose spreadsheets over human connection, and now I've got plenty of the former and none of the latter." "That's terribly sad," Poppy said. "You should try being less busy." "You're absolutely right," James agreed. "What about your father? Is he helping plan your mum's surprise?" Poppy's expression dimmed. "My dad died when I was 4. I have some memories, tiny fragments really. The way he'd sing to me at bedtime, how his beard tickled when he kissed me goodnight. Mum says he loved us more than anything, but he got ill and the doctors couldn't help him." "I'm so very sorry, Poppy," James said, his voice thick. "That must be incredibly difficult." "It is," Poppy acknowledged. "Mum works at a cafe during the day and cleans office buildings at night so we can afford our flat and everything else. She's always exhausted, but she still reads to me every evening and helps with my schoolwork. That's why I needed to get her something truly special. She deserves to smile." James had to look away, and Mrs. Davies, listening whilst finishing the boxes, dabbed at her eyes with her apron. "Your mother is extraordinarily lucky to have you," James finally managed. "Mr. James," Poppy said thoughtfully, "if you're alone today, would you like to come to Mum's birthday celebration tomorrow? It won't be fancy, we're just having cake and ice cream in our flat. But you shouldn't be alone on your birthday, even if it was technically yesterday by then." James looked at this child who'd known him for 15 minutes and was inviting him into her home, into her family's intimate celebration, simply because she believed no one should suffer loneliness. He felt something crack inside his chest, some protective wall he'd built to shield himself from acknowledging how utterly isolated he'd become. "Are you certain your mother would be comfortable with that?" he asked carefully. "Mum always says kindness costs nothing and means everything, especially to people who are hurting," Poppy replied. "And you're hurting, I think. So yes, she'd want you there." Mrs. Davies brought the boxes over, the magnificent strawberry cake and a container of scones and eclairs. James extracted a business card and handed it to Poppy. "This has my telephone number on it. Ask your mother to ring me if it's genuinely all right for me to attend. If I don't hear from her, I'll understand completely. But Poppy, thank you. You've made my birthday considerably better than I anticipated." Poppy carefully tucked the card into her cloth purse. "Thank you for being my birthday cake partner. You're very kind." James insisted on carrying the boxes to the address Poppy provided, which turned out to be a modest council estate 15 minutes walk away. When a woman in her late 20s answered the door, clearly shocked to find her daughter accompanied by a well-dressed stranger carrying expensive patisserie boxes, James quickly explained the circumstances. Emma, Poppy's mother, possessed the same green eyes as her daughter and the weary but gentle face of someone who worried constantly and slept too little. She attempted to refuse the cake, insisting it was far too generous, but Poppy firmly stated it had been purchased with her £5 and assistance from her birthday cake partner. "I promise I didn't approach your daughter," James said hastily, recognizing Emma's understandable wariness. "We met at Mrs. Davies's patisserie, and she noticed I was spending my birthday alone. She has an extraordinarily compassionate heart. The cake is genuinely from both of us." Emma examined the expensive cake, then her daughter's proud expression, then James again. "I don't know what to say. This is remarkably generous. Poppy invited me to your birthday celebration tomorrow," James continued. "I realize that's rather presumptuous, and I completely understand if you'd prefer I didn't come. But I wanted you to have my card and to know that your daughter is quite remarkable. She saw that I was lonely and decided to do something about it. That's a gift you've given her, that empathy." Emma accepted the card, noticed the company name, and her eyes widened. "You're the CEO of Heartwarming Global?" James nodded. "I am, but today I'm simply James. someone who met your daughter in a patisserie and was reminded that human kindness still exists. That evening, Emma telephoned James. She explained how Poppy hadn't stopped talking about her birthday cake partner, how hard her daughter had worked to save those 5 pounds, how much the gesture meant to both of them. She apologized for her initial suspicion, explaining that as a single mother she had to be cautious, but said if he genuinely wished to attend the party, they'd be honored to have him. The following evening, James arrived at their flat with flowers for Emma, a wrapped gift for Poppy he'd spent hours selecting, a beautiful illustrated book of fairy tales, and premium ice cream to accompany the cake. The celebration was small, just the 3 of them in a tiny flat that was spotlessly clean but sparsely furnished, decorated with handmade birthday banners Poppy had created with crayons and construction paper. They ate fish and chips that Emma had purchased with money she'd been saving, sang happy birthday, and cut into the magnificent strawberry cake with cream cheese frosting and sugar flowers. James couldn't recall any birthday, couldn't recall any evening, that had felt more like home. Over the subsequent months, James became a fixture in Poppy and Emma's life. He visited for dinner weekly, helped Poppy with school projects, and ensured Emma's ancient car received proper repairs when it finally gave up. He established a scholarship fund in his parents' names and made certain Emma was the first beneficiary, enabling her to reduce to 1 job and complete the teaching degree she'd abandoned when her husband fell ill. He also began transforming his own existence. He reconnected with old friends, started leaving the office at reasonable hours, and discovered the company operated perfectly well without his constant presence. He began constructing a life that felt full rather than hollow, connected rather than isolated. 14 months after that meeting in the patisserie, James invited Emma to dinner at an elegant restaurant, just the 2 of them. He'd been cautious about his developing feelings, conscious of the power dynamics and wanting to ensure anything between them was authentic rather than born from gratitude or obligation. But his feelings had only intensified, and after months of friendship and family dinners and gradually building something genuine, he finally confessed he'd fallen in love with her. Emma, who'd been resisting her own feelings for identical reasons, finally admitted she loved him as well. They married the following autumn in a small ceremony where Poppy served as flower girl and Mrs. Davies created the wedding cake. James legally adopted Poppy, and she began calling him Dad roughly 8 months later, tentatively at first, then with the comfortable ease of a child who felt secure. On their first anniversary, celebrating with strawberry cake from Mrs. Davies's patisserie, James told Poppy she'd saved his life that day she walked in with 5 pounds. "I thought I'd achieved everything," he said. "I had wealth and a company and all the trappings people associate with success. But I was completely empty, and I didn't even realize how desperately alone I was until a 7-year-old girl looked at me and asked if I was lonely. You saw me, Poppy. You saw I was hurting, and instead of looking away, you invited me in. You gave me a family when I had none. That's the greatest gift anyone's ever given me." Poppy, now 9 years old and more confident, but still possessing that same compassionate heart, embraced him tightly. "You were my birthday cake partner. Partners look after each other." Years later, when Poppy graduated from university, she delivered a speech at the ceremony about the people who'd shaped her journey. She spoke about her mother, who'd worked 2 jobs while still finding time for bedtime stories. She spoke about her father who died before she could truly know him, but whose love she still carried. And she spoke about the day she'd saved 5 pounds to purchase her mother a birthday cake and met a lonely man in a patisserie who became her dad. "He taught me that success is meaningless in isolation," Poppy said. "That the most important things in life are the connections we forge with one another, and that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is notice when someone is suffering and choose to care. My dad always says I saved his life that day, but honestly, we saved each other. That's what family does." James, seated in the audience between Emma and Mrs. Davies, whom they'd invited to the graduation, wiped tears from his eyes. He thought about the man he'd been 5 years earlier, successful but empty, building an empire whilst missing everything that mattered. And he thought about the little girl with uneven bunches who'd looked at him with serious eyes and asked if he was lonely, who'd invited him into her life expecting nothing in return. She'd had 5 pounds and a heart overflowing with love, and somehow that had been enough to transform everything, to build a family, to teach him that the most valuable things in life cannot be purchased, only chosen. That loneliness isn't a permanent condition but rather a problem that can be solved with connection and compassion and the courage to let someone past your defenses. The patisserie where it all began still stands on Maple Street in that Victorian terrace. Mrs. Davies, now retired but still visiting the shop her granddaughter manages, shares the story with customers occasionally, about the little girl with £5 and the lonely CEO and the birthday cake that brought them together. It's become something of a neighborhood legend, a reminder that everyday kindness creates ripples we cannot always predict, that a child's compassion can heal an adult's fractured heart, that family is built not merely through blood, but through choosing each other repeatedly through all the ordinary and extraordinary moments of life, and that sometimes all it takes to transform someone's existence is to see that they're hurting and invite them to share a piece of cake. Because cake tastes better when it's shared. Just like joy, just like love, just like life itself. That's what Poppy taught James in a patisserie one afternoon when she had £5 and he had everything except what mattered most. She taught him that the richest life is one filled with people to celebrate with, that success means nothing in isolation, and that the greatest gift we can offer each other is simply to recognize each other's pain and extend connection. They were birthday cake partners that day, but they became something far better. They became family, and that made all the difference. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Whispers of Light channel for more inspiring stories that remind us what truly matters in life. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone. And remember, sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest transformations. Thank you for watching, and until next time, choose connection over isolation, and never underestimate the power of noticing when someone needs a friend.